From Columbus, Ohio to Kazakhstan, an Ohio priest is working to sustain Catholic missions and culture around the world. We'll hear his story tonight, so please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. Before we get to our guests, I want to mention that today is the memorial of Saints Timothy and Titus. Both were disciples of St. Paul, and St. Timothy was left behind by St. Paul to be the bishop of Ephesus, while St. Titus was left to be the bishop of Crete. Both of them became not only bishops, but they also have letters addressed to them. 2 letters to Timothy, 1 to Titus, telling them how to run the church and how to establish the church. And St. Timothy's relics are still housed in the Church of the Holy Apostles in Istanbul, Turkey, along with the relics of St. Andrew and St. Luke, while the relics of St. Titus are in the Basilica of St. Titus on the island of Crete. So you can definitely go there to see. I've been over to see the head of St. Titus, which is kept in a reliquary there in Crete. Now tonight we have a guest who is the first American appointed as a consultant to the Pontifical Commission for the Cultural Heritage of the Catholic Church, which is charged with preserving the historical and artistic heritage of the entire church, which includes works of art, historical documents, books, and everything kept in museums, as well as the libraries and archives. He's the curator of the Jubilee Museum and a Catholic Cultural Center in Columbus, Ohio. He's also pastor of Holy Family Church. So please welcome Father Kevin Lutz. Father Kevin?
Thank you, Father.
Welcome.
Happy to be here.
Good to have you here. Good to have you.
It's very good to be here, Father. I've been looking forward to this.
You have this Jubilee Museum. Why do you call it the Jubilee Museum?
The name was suggested to us many years ago when we were getting founded. We were preparing for the Jubilee year 2000, and we were originally just going to make a historic display of our diocese for that year. But it caught on and became so popular, and people began donating things that would become part of a permanent collection, that it went on and became what it is now in its 13th year.
Okay, so 13 years now you've had this.
Yes.
Oh, good. So it was from right before the Jubilee years started that you began the museum.
Yes.
Now, you know, there are a number of questions about this because starting a new Catholic museum, and this is relatively new, is an unusual enterprise for a diocesan priest who's trying to run a parish in addition. And usually the parish keeps you plenty busy. Now you've got extra work here. Is that the case?
It does keep me busy. I sometimes tell people that it takes up the time I would use for playing golf if I played golf. So it's my golf game. But on the other hand, it also, I think it's one of the greatest things I have for our RCIA program. We have all the things historically that prove many of the arguments of the Catholic faith. We have historic Bibles. We have many things that show that the claims of the Church can be easily proven by historical documentation and artifacts.
Well, as a matter of fact, you brought one of the historical Bibles with you. Which Bible is this?
That's the 1582 first edition Reims New Testament given to us by Bob Murawski, a benefactor in Columbus. And that Bible is the first real English-speaking Bible in the Reformation era.
Yeah, this predates the King James Bible by 30 years.
It does, and in fact, the King James, the first edition, acknowledges that this was one of the sources that they consulted in their translation.
Right. So they used this Catholic translation as part of their own background.
That's a very honest statement for them to have made. It shows that they were more concerned with scholarship and accuracy than just religious polemics.
Right. No, that's a good thing. But that's a pretty early English Bible. I think there were some other English Bibles earlier than this one.
Well, St. Bede the Venerable had the first, of course.
Yeah, right, but you don't have one of those.
Not yet.
Not yet. No, I like that attitude, a little positive. Not yet. Now, what are some of the other Bibles that you have?
We have one that's older than this. It's a 1563 Vulgate printed at Paris, printed 1 year.
What's the Vulgate, for those who don't know?
That's the St. Jerome's edition. St. Jerome translated the scriptures early on, and of course his was the standard for the Catholic Church.
Right.
And Jerome was
Roman Rite.
Yes.
Right.
And Jerome was a very scholarly man. I don't think he's always given the full credit that he deserves for his scholarship with languages.
No, that's absolutely true. As a matter of fact, when doing biblical scholarship, he is still consulted as one of the sources, for text criticism, because his translation is so wonderful.
Absolutely. There's a painting above that Bible in our museum showing him with the scriptures open, and it's an interesting painting because it also has a lion at his feet. He had a pet lion.
Right.
Now, Jerome was also noted for
I generally like dogs myself.
Well, Jerome was noted for his quick temper, and people who knew him said they felt sorry for the lion.
Yeah.
So,
besides Bibles, though, what else do you have in the museum?
Oh, we have many historic nun habits. We have many robes that belong to former bishops, and we have artifacts that belong to several of the popes.
Like one of them is right here. What is it that you have here?
That's the fascia or the sash that was worn by Pope Pius XII. There's only a few of these. He gave his hats away quite frequently, the little zucchetto.
Right.
If you went and had a visit, you could bring him one, and he would take yours and wear it, and then it went to the next person. But he never gave away his sashes. And so there's probably only 2 or 3 of these in the world. One of them he was buried in, and a couple in the Vatican archives, and we have one as well.
Okay. How'd you get that?
It came from the Catholic Record Society in Columbus, and they received it from a convent that had it as part of their patrimony, and they thought it should have a wider appreciation.
Oh, okay. Good. Well, that's a good use of it. So you've got artifacts of various kinds of clothing. What else do you have there?
Well, fabrics that were part of the vestments of John Carroll, the first American bishop. And they were made from his mother's wedding dress. In those days, people didn't waste anything.
No.
They would often take things and reuse them, recycle them, so to speak. And so the pattern on it doesn't look like liturgical fabric, but it was actually used for his vestments.
Okay. And what else do you have?
A number of vestments from the Holy Land. The Franciscans have put some of their collection in our care, and some of these vestments go back 300 and 400 years.
Right.
Very beautiful dalmatics and chasubles and the like, and they're all on display in the museum.
Are these some of the vestments that they had over at Ein Kerem? Do you know?
I am not sure of that, but I know that they did travel for years. There was a Franciscan who went to Eucharistic congresses, and this is the collection he often brought with him around the world.
Okay.
So it's quite a diversified collection going, and many of them have royal coats of arms on them from some of the European families that wanted to be prayed for and remembered in the Holy Land at the places where Christ lived and died and rose.
Yeah, I think we've got some pictures of some of those of it for our audience to look at. And you've got a number of other vestments as well as those from the Holy Land.
We have a number, and new to old, and sometimes we help out the missions. A lot of missionaries come by and are looking for things that are both lightweight and not valuable, so that they can use them in the missions, and we send them out as we can.
Oh, okay. Now, first of all, where is the museum housed?
It's located in the old high school and grade school at Holy Family Parish in Columbus, Ohio. And it's an old, large building. It was Columbus's first fireproof building, so it's a very sturdy structure.
Oh, that's a good thing.
Oh, it is. And we have about 20 rooms that are open for display and touring, and the rest of the rooms are used presently for storage. But we're a very crowded place, but we're hoping to improve that situation. And also in the same building, we have a soup kitchen on the lower floor. They use the old school cafeteria and the lowest floor's classrooms. And Cardinal Marcassano, who came, said, "I see that upstairs you have the treasures of Christ in art, Downstairs you have the treasures of Christ and the poor.
Yes.
So he thought that was a great thing that we had such unusual things in the same building, a museum of great significance and a soup kitchen that is known as the largest in the state of Ohio.
Oh, that's pretty good.
We feed about 700 to 1,000 meals a day, depending on the weather and other factors that play into it.
Well, that is a large soup kitchen. That's very large. And I bet you I can imagine it's kind of hard to keep both of these going.
Well, we count on the providence of God and the kindness of our friends.
Yeah.
We don't get any federal money for the soup kitchen or anything like that. It's supported entirely by voluntary donations.
Okay. One of the things too, a lot of times museums will have large amounts of money given to them so they can go and buy various artifacts. How do you manage?
Well, I can just say to that one, not yet, but we're hoping the day will come. We have a number of people who have given us things out of their private collections, like the Bible here, the 1563 Bible, and there are a couple of angels who see things in auctions and they'll buy things for us. But I would say 95% of our patrimony in the museum has been given to us.
Okay, so most of the artifacts that you have, people have in their own private collections.
Yes.
How about churches? Sometimes churches are closing down, and they have some beautiful things there. Do you get anything from churches?
We have. Our diocese hasn't gone through as much of that as some dioceses have, and thanks be to God for that. But when there is a church that has to be closed, or a chapel, for instance, that's been abandoned, like our old orphanage, they've been very careful to have things taken down and properly removed. About 3 years ago, our orphanage was torn down. We rescued the windows, the pipe organ, and a number of things out of there, and we're trying to raise the money to restore some of these. Things that old always need a little bit extra care.
Yeah. So do these Bibles. I mean, that's amazing. It's amazing that because it looks like it's in good shape too. Whoever had it all these centuries really kept good care of it.
Yes. People sometimes ask us if we have all the proper humidity in the building, and the answer really is no. But if most of these pieces of art could talk, they would say they'd never had it so good, because some of them came from some very adverse conditions. We had some very historic vestments that we acquired that had been bagged in plastic trash bags and stored just rolled up. And so that's hardly ideal for them. So we've had a lot of things that came out of, hidden closets where they were found after being abandoned 50, 100 years ago, and they're finally cleaning out a place, and they come across these things. We found a lot of things like that. So they're breathing nicely in our building, despite the fact that the humidity maybe could be improved a little.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you have that is of interest to us is a statue of the child Jesus.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about that.
That was a statue given to us some years ago, and it's the statue that was a great inspiration to Mother Angelica, because it represents, the child Jesus and the inspiration he gave her and so on. So it's in what are called the Tridentine Chapel, and that statue is dedicated to Mother Angelica and the sisters here at EWTN.
Oh, nice. That's very nice.
It's our little tribute to them to say thank you for the good work that you do.
When you say you have a Tridentine Chapel, what do you mean by that?
Several of the rooms are set up in chapel style, where they have Bibles, but they're also displayed on an altar and the like. The Tridentine Chapel showcases the treasures of the traditional Latin Mass, the extraordinary form. We have over 200 missals there, and the oldest is 1598 up to the last editions published in 1962. And it still has the traditional catafalque. We have a funeral depicted there, so there's funeral vestments. And many of the altar cards and the other books, the Canon Missae and others that were used by bishops, are all on display there.
A lot of people don't remember or can't remember because they never knew, but the Mass vestments for funerals used to be all black.
Yes.
So you've got some of those.
Yes, we have those. And in fact, our parish still has, because we have the Latin Mass, the last funeral that I had was a solemn high requiem for a Columbus police officer who died, a tremendous man. He was shot in 1979 and lived for 31 years as an invalid, praying for the man who shot him, and we finally had his funeral. It was a great thing, but he wanted the traditional Mass. He'd been a seminarian for a year, so he wanted to have it as his funeral Mass.
Now, one of the odd things about your museum is that you have a Jewish section.
Yes.
Now, the reason I say that's odd is this is a Catholic museum. Why do you have a Jewish section?
Salvation is from the Jews.
That's my Bible.
So in that room, which is dedicated to the survivor of the Holocaust, Morris Dash, he died a few years ago, and actually I was asked to preach his funeral at the synagogue. And I did, and my opening words, which were well received, were, I said, I prayed this morning coming in that I would be asked to speak, and all I can say is thank you, Jesus. Nobody was offended, and I still talk to many people there. Every year he would put up a Christmas tree in his window, I'd put up a menorah in mine, our little way of saying hi to each other. But we want to show the Old Testament roots of our faith and the proper respect that we ought to have both for the Old Testament and the Jewish people.
Yeah, that's a good thing. What are some of the artifacts that you have there besides the menorah that you put in the window?
Well, we have a Torah, the Yod.
Which is what?
The first 5 books of the Bible.
Okay.
It's on the scroll format, and we have an ark, which is the cabinet that the scrolls are kept in. We have a painting there that's believed to be an original work by John Singer Sargent showing the prophets in the Old Testament who prophesied about Christ. There are other little pieces of Judaica, and trying to think what else. I'm looking at the walls in my mind and trying to picture what else. Just some Jewish paintings. We have a Chagall print there that was given by the family of Morris Dash, and finally a picture of him himself. Okay. When he was alive, he used to come to the museum, and we'd bring students through, and he would come and talk to them, and he would talk about forgiveness, and he would urge them never to have hatred in their heart. He said, never seek revenge. So he gave a great witness to
that great
value.
Witness. That is a great witness. One of the questions that, I guess I would ask is, you have this museum. You have a lot of very famous visitors come. You mentioned this cardinal that came.
Cardinal Marcassano has been there twice, and he was the first president of the Pontifical Commission for Cultural Heritage. And he came over, and the very first visit, he was amazed at some of the paintings we had and the large collection. And he asked me a question. He goes, where did you get your interest in art? And I said, I've just had an interest. And my sister whispered to me, he swings into the church on the wrecking ball and grabs what he can on the way out. That was her description of how I got many of these things.
I see. And you've had some other famous visitors as well. You had the Archduke of Austria.
Yes, Archduke Edward von Habsburg and his wife Maria Theresa. Cardinal Lorenzi, upon whom I played a terrible trick. We have a statue.
You do?
Oh, we had a statue in the hallway. It's St. Nicholas, but I asked, it's in a green vestment, and everybody guesses St. Patrick. So when he took the tour, I said, Your Eminence, who is this? And he goes, well, of course, St. Patrick. I said, I knew you were going to say that, so I got up early this morning and made this sign. And I do this to everybody. I flip it, and it says, no, not St. Patrick. And so he stood there and laughed for 5 minutes. He thought that was the funniest thing, so I thought it's probably risky to tempt a cardinal like that. Maybe you could excommunicate me on the spot.
I noticed you're not a Monsignor yet.
That's not coming.
Yeah, you got to watch the good sense of humor of the folks in the Curio. But besides, these people that come to visit, the question that I would have is, why would you make such a museum? What's the purpose of having such a museum?
I think preserving the Catholic mind and memory is an important thing. One of the things that most people say when they get older they don't want to lose is their memory. But we have a collective memory as a church, and the only way it can be preserved once we die is in the books, the writings, the paintings, the stained glass, the music, and all other things that we leave behind. That's how the past still speaks to us. Without it, we're just guessing what people thought, believed, or felt. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. See, that's one of the things. I just answered an email that I recently got about, why do we bother to study history? And I gave basically the same kind of answer, that it's very important to be able to study history and know where we come from and because it's hard to know where you're going if you don't know where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. And so that's a very important thing to study history. Do people, I guess visitors from other parishes come to your museum as well?
We have a lot of groups coming through. RCIA classes will come from different parishes, confirmation classes, and especially...
And RCIA, again, just so that some of our folks don't know what that means.
Yes, the Rite of Christian Initiation of Adults. So people who are studying to become Catholic from either no religion or from other Christian religions, they want the fullness of Christ and His church, they will take these series of classes. And then one of the classes will be a tour of our museum. And it takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours to go through it. It really is a long thing, and we guide every tour and try to teach people what it is and why we love and cherish our Catholic faith. And many times it's some of these little tokens that are left behind. I mean, you're very moved sometimes to see the prayer book of a priest that's so worn out you can hardly pick it up. Or one of the most moving things, sentimentally speaking, is one of our priests years ago built a church in 1928, and he spent his whole life there, and it was sold and torn down while he was still pastor. He stood there on the corner and watched the demolition and wouldn't allow any protest or anything. And just the faith that he had and some of the things he said were a great witness. I think they inspire many of our seminarians and others, that the faith and the trust that he had in God.
You know, one of the other things that, besides the history, you also preserve a number of things, like some organs and such. I don't mean organ. Well, you have your own kind of organ donors, but tell us about the organs that you preserve.
We've rescued a number of pipe organs, and one of them in particular, the company was supposed to remove it from a church, and we were given 4 days to get it out. They failed in their contract, so I took about 6 guys from the soup kitchen, trustworthy souls from our soup kitchen down below, and they disassembled it under my guidance, and it was reassembled by a retired upholsterer and a guy from the phone company. Now, sometimes when you deal with pipe organs, they say, oh, you have to go to Europe to get someone who can fix that. Like there's a warehouse in Berlin where organ technicians are waiting for a call from the U.S. And it's nothing like that at all. I mean, it's complicated simplicity if you look at a pipe organ. And it was reassembled by these 2 people, and it plays fine. It's one of the featured organs on our museum tours. But it was taken out in 4 days by drug addicts and reassembled by an upholsterer and a phone technician. So.
That sounds like the start of a joke.
Well, I'm working on a punchline.
Yeah, you got to get the punchline there. That's pretty good. But preserving these things is part of what you do as well, so that they can be used again. Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes dealing with pipe organs, they're very cost prohibitive. Sometimes the cost of taking them out. So sometimes when they're down to the wire and nobody's nibbled at it, we'll go in and take it out and rescue it. We have a couple of them in storage at the museum, and we're trying to rehabilitate them for the diocese. Okay. So that's our present plan.
Yeah. And see, that's one of the other things too, is that it's not only having these things in a museum where people can look at them, but restoring some of these things for usage. One of the stories I understand is that there were some Stations of the Cross that went to Kazakhstan.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Bishop Athanasian Schneider, who wrote the book...
he's been a guest on this show.
Oh, well, then he's known to your audience. He walked through our museum, and you can't say no to a bishop, but especially one as charming as him. He saw our relic of St. Augustine, and he seemed to be looking at it with some keen interest. And I said, are you devoted to St. Augustine? Oh, very much so. Here. So I gave it to him. And then he saw these Stations of the Cross we had. They're about 8 foot tall, beautiful, beautiful stations. And they were made by the DePrado Company many years ago, almost a century ago. And he asked if we had the whole set or just that one that was on display. I said, I have them all. He said, is there any chance we could get them for the cathedral in Kazakhstan? Actually, they were so big, nobody else could possibly fit them into a church. You really need a cathedral for them, and that's what he's building. So we made arrangements, and one of my old students who runs a logistics company, Doug Byworth, arranged, that was your commercial, Doug, to get them all the way shipped to Germany And from there, another company took over and shipped them all the way to Kazakhstan. So there's one of the probably biggest projects. And we also sent a set of organ pipes for an organ facade in another church in that area.
So you're actually not only preserving our Catholic history from around the world, but you're also helping the missions.
Absolutely. We've sent things to Mexico, we've sent things to the Philippines, and the American Home Missions. We're not a store, and we're not trying to, I got a call once going, I hear you're trying to get rid of some church junk. So that was hardly the case.
Yeah,
but,
really.
No, we're trying to preserve things, but there are things given to us that can be recycled and reused. They're not particularly old, but they're very practical, and they might be a great advantage to a church that couldn't otherwise afford them. So we're very mindful of the poorest of the missions.
Which is the same thing as what's going down underneath in the lower level of your museum with the
Absolutely.
soup kitchen.
Yes.
So this is sort of like a soup kitchen for churches.
Well, no one said that before, but that's part of our folklore now. Thank you, Father.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But it's it's a great thing that you're doing, and understand that Venerable Pope John Paul the Great also gave his sort of a stamp of approval. He sent you some sort of a certificate.
Yes, he appointed me as a consultor to the Pontifical Commission for Cultural Heritage, and he also sent his Zucchetto to us.
Oh, nice.
And hoping for his canonization, I actually cut a few pieces off the back as relics and gave them to people who were sick. Among them was my niece, who at 19 was diagnosed with cancer, and who is happily married now with a child and cancer-free.
Oh, great.
So,
did they write up her case?
It has not been done. Probably still to be considered.
Yeah, because they've got they need the second miracle for the canonization process. So that would be a good thing.
Well, we're praying for many miracles.
Yes.
We have a long list.
Yes, really. This is a cool kind of mission that you have. How much time does it take for you to do on a regular basis?
Oh, there's times where I don't even go in the museum for a week. If I'm over there much, it's to give a quick tour. Usually in the evening, after the employees have gone home, I'll do an evening class for an RCIA or something like that. And every now and then I'll get ambitious, or some big collection comes in or donation, and I have to find a place for it, and I work with my staff on that. Okay. I've got a very dedicated staff, very generous people who work there, and many who volunteer there as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, we need to take a little break, but we're going to come back in a couple of minutes. And we'd like to get questions from our studio audience as well as from you. So please call in with your questions for Father and his museum, and we'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. If you would like more information on the Jubilee Museum and Catholic Cultural Center in Columbus, Ohio, go to www.jubileemuseum.org, jubileemuseum.org, and they'll get you all kind of information about that. Do you have pictures on your website?
We do, and there's 3 promotional videos there that can also be watched.
Okay, cool. Also, we have a number of people. As a matter of fact, you brought your own audience, didn't you?
I did.
pretty good. That's a smart move. I wish more of my guests would do that. That's a good idea. And we'd love to have you come and join us to be part of our studio audience. If you can come either as an individual or as a group or a family, we'd love to have you be part of our studio audience. Please contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. That's 205-271-2966. Or go to our website, www.ewtn.com, and they will help you with all kinds of information about where you can stay. I don't know if you got a chance to do that, your group got to, but some of my favorite local restaurants are very religious in orientation. We have Hamburger Heaven. And we have Golden Rule Barbecue. So, I mean, it's a religious theme here. So we'd love to have you come and join us and enjoy beautiful Irondale, Alabama. Are you ready for some questions?
I'm ready.
All right, let's start off with Adele. Hello, Adele.
Hello.
Hi, where are you from?
Chicago.
Great. And what is your question?
My question is, all those fine artifacts, what protection does Father have against the elements such as fire? And also, insurance-wise, does he have these things insured? Thank you.
Thank you, Adele.
The building itself is considered Columbus's first fireproof building. The whole building is solid masonry, all the walls. There's no plaster in it anywhere. So it's a very safe and secure building. And also the electricity in it is very updated. And beyond that, we do carry insurance on our inventory.
That's an important thing because you got to be able to, even if you have a fire, you lose it, but, you could at least replace it with some other things. God forbid that you would have such a thing because, again, it's precisely those kind of disasters that lead to the loss of a lot of great artifacts to history, and we hate to see that happen. We have a question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
Columbus, Ohio, Holy Family, God's favorite parish. That's a little inside joke, Father.
Yes, I guess so. Okay.
Now, I'd just like for Father to say a little more about some of the relics that we have there at the museum. I believe we do have some of the original apostles, Father, am I right?
We do. We have a special reliquary that contains relics of the 12 apostles, and it's in the context of a larger collection of relics that I say numbers about 450 at this.
450 relics?
450 relics.
That's pretty good.
And they represent a wide distribution both in Christian era, the length of it, and a great diversity from abbots to virgins and confessors, apostles and martyrs. And it's all very well displayed there, and we have a lot of information and documentation on almost all the relics.
As a matter of fact, not too far away from Columbus, closer to Dayton, there is a church that has a lot of relics.
Maria Stein.
Maria Stein, exactly. I've been there. And they have way more than you do. They have
thousands.
Thousands. Yes. Of relics, that is.
Yes. Those are the Sisters of the Precious Blood.
Right. One of the other things that you have are a lot of chalices, some of which are decorated with precious jewels.
Yes, that's part of the Holy Land collection. Many of them date from the 1700s, and one of them contains an amethyst that belonged to Mary, Queen of Scots.
We've got it on the screen there, in fact.
Yes.
So that amethyst, which is a very large one, belonged to Mary, Queen of Scots.
Yes.
Wow. This is the same Mary, Queen of Scots who lost her head.
The one and the same, yes.
Yes, one and the same. Wow. God bless her. But, this is one of the reasons for a great museum like this. Some of these artifacts that would be lost to history. I mean, Mary, Queen of Scots, lost her head to Elizabeth I. And, so little of her artifacts would be around. But to have that jewel preserved in a chalice is a really very cool thing to have.
I've been asked a few times to loan it out. We can't really, I have to take it anywhere it goes. And I took it on an airplane trip about a year ago for a wedding up in New York. And I was afraid when I went through the scanner I was going to have a problem with it, but you would have thought they had chalices going through every day. Huh. But it never left my side. Even at the reception, it went everywhere with me. But generally, it doesn't travel much.
One of the other things that we're showing is you have some pre-Christian pottery as well on your program, on your museum. Where did you get that from?
That's also part of the Holy Land collection, and also just that went by on the screen was the spear. It's a 2nd century Roman spear, and there's not much evolution in the spear as a weapon. That's very much like the spear that lanced the side of Christ on Calvary, but it's dated from the 2nd century Christian era.
Okay, cool. We have another question from our studio audience. Matt, where are you from?
Father, I'm from Columbus, Ohio.
Also, so you're part of the group that came down with Father. God bless you all for being here.
Thank you very much.
What's your question?
Father, from time to time, I will see at a flea market or an auction or even at a store religious items from the Catholic faith, closed down churches or whatever. I see relics, vestments, all sorts of things. I'm wondering what the church's position is on the sale of those kinds of items and also the potential for us to purchase them.
Father?
Well, there's a small number of items in the museum that have actually come from flea markets where people saw things there, and sometimes it upset them greatly, and they just bought it on the spot and then just gave it to us and asked nothing more than just please take good care of it. I've gone a few times to flea markets and seen piles of vestments and things, and nobody ever is quite sure where they came from. You know, you're dealing with maybe the third owner of them who may not know quite where they originally were used. But I'm always grateful when people do have that sense to rescue these things out of flea markets and antique stores. There's some things we're not interested in, you know, little ceramics of, you know, that were really planters. That kind of art isn't, you know, what we're looking for. But people do find chalices and reliquaries and relics. We're grateful when they're rescued. And again, the church doesn't approve of trafficking in them, but I think once they do become part of the traffic, if you can get them back out of circulation and get them into a museum, it's a good thing.
Yeah, that if somebody has a religious article, you're not supposed to be buying and selling them and trading in them. This is one of the things, because you never know what kind of blasphemous use they might be used for. I heard of a bar in south side of Chicago that had a tabernacle, and what I don't even want to describe what they were doing with it, but it was something that was really, really blasphemous, sacrilegious. And so, you know, you want to rescue these things so that they're not abused.
There is an article that we bought from an auction. It was an altar, and it was wood. It's about 13 feet tall, beautiful carving, Gothic style, and all along the edge of it are cigarette burns. It was in a bar for many years, and it was just used as a counter where they had liquor bottles on it. And the bar apparently got rid of it, and it went to auction, and we were able to get it. Yeah. But it's a sad thing to see about 25 cigarette burns along the edge of it, and thinking that people didn't have, even if you're in a bar, there should be a religious sense that don't misuse this thing. If you wouldn't do that to a regular bar, I'd hope. If you like your barkeeper, don't burn his bar, so don't burn the altar either.
Right. Also, you have a small sketch of Mount Calvary in the museum. What's the story behind that?
That particular piece is a Rembrandt. That's an original, and that was on loan to us for a couple of years. It is presently back out of the museum, but the owner of it, one of our deacons, purchased that as a gift for his wife, but it had to abide somewhere until the occasion came for him to present it to her. So we had the enjoyment of it for about a year and a half.
Oh, nice.
And we're praying that someday they get tired of it in their house and give it back to us, and I hope they're watching as I say this.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We have another caller on the line. We have Margaret. Hello, Margaret. Margaret, are you there? Oh, she's not there. We lost her. Well, let's go to a question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
Father, I'm from Columbus, Ohio, Holy Family Parish.
Okay.
And I really don't have a question for Father. I more have a statement. I know him fairly well since I am his sister. I am the one who he mentioned speaking about hanging onto a wrecking ball and collecting things.
Oh, you're the one who came up with the comment.
I am the one who did that. But I just want to make just a couple of comments. Father hates it when I say anything nice about him. He'd much prefer that I just act like a normal sibling like we most often do. But occasionally I have to say something nice. And I understand where he got the idea of collecting treasures, because he was a treasure when my mother carried him into the house when I was 4 years old. And so I'm sure he got that love of treasures from our mother. The fact that the museum teaches so much and you know, that there's this great love of learning is a surprise to me, as Father was not exactly an academic scholar as a young person. I often ask him, how did you get so smart? But obviously the museum and all the things that he's learned and his great love of the church and everything has proven to me that this really is a great teaching tool for many, many people.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you very much.
You're very
Appreciate
welcome.
that. You got to keep your eye on the big sister, don't you?
There you go. I owe her $100 now.
We now have another caller, Lourdes. Hello, Lourdes.
Hello, Father Mitch.
Hi, where are you from?
I'm from Tampa, Florida.
Great, and what's your question?
In Cleveland, a lot of churches closed this year. What happens with all the stuff in there? There were lots of beautiful statues in the one that I was familiar with.
I've actually been up to Cleveland, so I can answer that. There's a company up there that deals in religious goods called Henningers, and they have been appointed by the diocese to be in charge of the distribution of these things. And they have them stored very carefully in a warehouse. The churches in Cleveland had the first right to select things that they could use there, and they're only dealing with churches so that things stay in the household of God. Church closings are always sad, but at least if the patrimony is protected and it doesn't end up in the common marketplace, that's a good thing. So I've been through their warehouse, and I think they're trying to make a very serious effort to respect ultimately the wishes of the donors, that if these things can't be used in the churches where they were, that they are at least historically preserved.
As a matter of fact, I know that one of the Henningers, one of their sons is a Jesuit priest. So it's a good Catholic family, and I know that they take great pride in making sure that things stay inside the church and that they're at the service of the church through making these things available. So, all right, now we have Margaret back on the line. Hello, Margaret.
Hello, Father.
Hi, where are you from?
North Wales, Pennsylvania.
Great, and what's your question?
Do you have any Eastern Catholic items, such as icons, Eastern Catholic vestments, in the Jubilee Museum?
Do you?
We do. We have probably about 20 icons, maybe 25. And one of the most beautiful ones, one of the most interesting ones, was one of our angels. She's always buying things for us. She bought a particular icon for her house, and it didn't quite fit where she wanted it to go, so she gave it to us. And I've encouraged her ever since then to keep buying things without measuring, so that they can all come to us. But she's been a great benefactor and a great friend to us. But we do have a number of things, including even missals from some of the Eastern rites. I would love to get an iconostasis. I'd love to create a room that would just show the Eastern rites of the church.
What is an iconostasis?
That's the great wall that is like a veil over the sanctuary. It has the holy doors in the middle and doors on the sides where the deacon and the priest enter and exit at various parts of the Mass. And
it has icons
yes.
As well. Sometimes the whole thing is an icon. Even the doors are icons. Sometimes.
Yes, you'll have images of Our Lady and Christ, the angel Gabriel, the angel Michael, and so on and so forth.
St. John the Baptist is a very common one.
Right.
Yeah. So you do have Eastern Rite
a few
artifacts.
things. We'd like more. Anything that really expresses the Catholic mind and memory. We even tell people, send us your yearbooks, send us your report cards. You can make all the F's into A's with a little line on the right side.
Whatever it takes. Minute, not so fast.
Oh, Father, some of us did that.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. It's no wonder some of those students' parents didn't come and see me. Oh, that's good. Anything else about your museum?
Oh, I'd say it's the reaction that most people have after they've seen the first level of it, they're already surprised that there's more than one room. Most people think when you hear a church museum, you're going to have 10 pictures of dead pastors and a shovel from the ground breaking. We don't have all the pictures and we don't have the shovel, but we've got a lot of interesting things. But most people just go from room to room, there's more. Then they say, now we have to go upstairs. And they're just, at the end of it, usually just overwhelmed by how much is there.
Oh, that's
and
good.
It really is a massive dose of good Catholic art and beauty. They get to hear the musical instruments played. They get to see a lot of things. We've had people discover themselves in the museum, or their parents or grandparents in some old class pictures or yearbooks.
Yeah, this is one of the things. You also have one of the things you have is a handwritten letter from Leo the 13th.
Yes.
How'd you get that?
That also came with the fascia here in the collection that the Dominican sisters gave to the Catholic Record Society. And there were a number of papal artifacts in there that, including rosaries and other things that belonged to several of the popes.
Oh, cool. That's pretty cool. Well, again, it's not easy to get those things. So, especially here in America. In Europe, you can understand that these things are around, and maybe it'd be easier to get them in a museum. But all the way over here in America, it's not so common, so that adds to the specialness of it.
Yes. Occasionally you'll see them on eBay, and sometimes when I'm trying to even calculate the value of certain things, you just watch and see what it goes for. Although I hate to see it there, at least to give you some point of reference for assessing both the popularity and the value of a particular item.
Sure. We have another caller on the line named Jim. Hello, Jim.
Yes, Father Mitch. Jim,
hi, where are you from?
Dallas. First, thank you for coming to All Saints Church in Dallas.
Oh, it was my pleasure to be there.
Relics in the altar that were there until the mid-'70s. And what happens to those relics of the saints?
So when you have an altar and they change it out, what happens to the relics of the saints that are in the altar?
In most cases, the relics are contained in a smaller stone that was right in the middle, and that stone is taken out. In the case where the whole altar slab was a large stone, there will be a cavity in the middle about so large, and in there, when the lid is taken off, there's a little box and the relics are in there. But it's strictly required that those things be removed before an altar is taken out of commission. And in fact, because of that, we have a very large number of altar stones in the museum. In fact, we've thought of even making an All Saints Chapel. I could probably do an entire wall in altar stones. And many times we don't have the documentation anymore, although there's a secondary documentation inside the stone for each one. Mm-hmm. But there's generally a great respect to make sure that the stones are taken out of the altar when it is decommissioned.
Now, do they tell you what saints are in the altar stones?
So many times churches have lost the documentation, and even chanceries don't always have that information because of fires and moves and so on.
Right.
But recently, one of our churches had to relocate an altar, and they wanted to know who was in it. So I was delegated by the Vicar General to open the stone, examine the relics, certify who they were, and then repose them back into the box and create a document for that. So I do that sort of thing as well.
Okay. So there are a number of very interesting things that you have, and this besides the altar stones, and like say you could have an All Saints Chapel. What do you mean by an All Saints Chapel?
Well, just because there'd be so many relics of all the saints. As I say, if we counted the altar stones I probably have 600 or 700 relics of the saints. We just don't have any reason to open up all these little stones and see who's in them at this point, unless there's need if it goes into a church. But just since many of them will never be used again, it would be nice to just put them all into an altar and venerate that as an All Saints Chapel.
Mm-hmm. There's a parish church in Chicago called Queen of All Saints that has a huge collection of relics on display when you go into the vestibule of the church. And that's a very nice thing for the devotion of the faithful to be able to go there. So that could be another kind of thing. As a matter of fact, if I were to do that in your museum, I would have the Litany of the Saints playing in the background there. That would be a...
You're full of good suggestions, Father. I hope my staff will make note of that and
take note.
Make that happen.
Write that down.
You ought to come through and take the tour yourself, Father, when you're in Columbus.
I know it. Next time I'm in Columbus. I like Columbus. For one thing, they sell Grater's ice cream there, and I always like Grater's ice cream. But I've had reason to be in Columbus especially when Marcus Grodi has his Deep in History conferences.
Coming Home Network.
Home Network conferences. I get a chance to go to Columbus, so I'll make sure I try to get over to your museum next time.
We bring a display to that every year. Marcus is a good friend and supporter of the museum, and so depending on what his theme is in history, we try to bring artifacts that represent that era or that theme each year. One
of the things you said that you do is you bring RCIA groups, the instruction for adults who are becoming Catholics. What are some of the lessons that you teach them by going through the museum?
Well, a lot of people have questions about the Bible, and so there's a question about the so-called deuterocanonical books. Do they belong in the canon of Scripture or not?
This would be the books that are in the Catholic Bible but are not in the Protestant Bible.
Exactly. And one of the things we show them, I always tell people, facts are stubborn things. You can have opinions on a lot of matters, but facts are stubborn things. So we have a facsimile edition of the Gutenberg, and that was...
Wait, what do you mean by the Gutenberg?
The famous first book ever set on movable type by Johann Gutenberg in about 1455. He set the Scriptures onto movable type. It was the first time that had ever been done, the invention of the printing press. And he printed 300 copies of the Bible. About 42 are accounted for at this point due to wars, thievery, and fires and bombs and the like. But we have a facsimile edition of it, and it shows that those books were in the Bible before the Reformation. So when somebody says, why did you Catholics add those 7 books? I always say that's like the 3-fingered press operator saying, why do people have 7 extra fingers?
Right.
They were there before. Somebody else took them out.
Right.
We didn't stuff them in later.
Yeah, oftentimes you'll hear people say, well, the Catholic Church added those 7 books at the Council of Trent. That's not true.
We added a penalty there that was more severe. It would be the equivalent of your mother saying, don't slam the door 1,000 times. Then she goes, you slam the door, you're grounded. And then you say, my mother's mean. She said, if I slam the door, I'm grounded. No, she said 900,000 times before that, don't slam the door. The Church at all its councils from 394 has repeated the list of books that we use to this day.
Right. It just added a penalty there.
It just a severe penalty of excommunication because nobody had ever made such a dramatic challenge to them.
Right. But I usually try to point out, you cannot find any copies of Christian Bibles. When you find the whole Bible, you can't find any copies that don't have those 7 deuterocanonical books, which are the 2 Maccabees, Sirach, the Book of Wisdom, Judith, and Tobit, and Baruch.
Yes.
So these books are part of the Bible, and you've got hard evidence. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you've got a facsimile of the 1611 King James Bible.
I do.
Do you?
And they're in there.
They're in there. I know. That's what I was going to point out. Those books are in the King James Bible in the 1611 edition.
Yes. They disappear a little bit later on.
Yeah, the 1627 edition.
Yes.
Yeah, they took them out at the print shop because I think the printers were Puritans and they didn't like them.
But some Protestant Bibles that are still published to this day still include them. They segregate them, but they still include them there.
Yes.
So it's not a completely settled question, even outside of Catholic circles.
No, that's exactly right. It's one of those things that they still go back and forth. There are editions of the King James Bible that go back to the 1611 version and others that don't. So sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. Well, that's been pretty good. We're getting close to running out of time. Are there any last points you want to make about your museum?
It's been a lot of fun to do it. I think it would be a great thing to see more dioceses adopt this policy. I think our diocese has distinguished itself in that regard, and the Vatican is really concerned about the loss of a lot of our religious patrimony that does seem to often just go by the wayside. And the Holy Father wrote years ago about the importance of diocesan museums. But the most important thing about it is it's a great tool for evangelization. It's not just a display of interesting old things. You know, it's a part of the living memory of the people who taught us and gave us the faith, going right back to the time of Christ.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Thank you very much for joining us here. And if you would join me in giving a blessing, may Almighty God bless you and keep you and cause His face to shine upon you. May He lead you in all your ways by His peace and direct all your steps. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We want to thank you, Father, for being with us, and we want to thank you because you make this network possible. If you don't keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, we can't pay our bills. So please remember to do that for us so that we can bring you more programs like this one and all the other programs that we have here in the network. God bless you all, and thank you very much.